Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. The Tang sect had provided around 2,000 stationary soul cannon shells. Shrek Academy also had several hundred stationary soul cannon shells of different classes. More than 500 shells were fired in this first round, since there were many Zhuge divine crossbow cannons available. If their monetary value was measured, it would take a long time to count the number of zeros in the number generated. The Soul Tool Department's Dean Xian Lina, Vice Dean Qian Duo, and Xian Ziwen from the Tang sect's Soul Tool Hall contorted their faces in reluctance after this first round. Even if they won this war, they would need to save up for a long time before they could obtain so many stationary soul cannon shells again. The soul beasts were a little surprised by the range of the humans' attack. However, the shells were fired into the distance. The soul beasts that were charging in front towards the city wall weren't affected. Very soon, the soul beast army was already beneath the wall. The Zhuge divine crossbow cannons were fired once again. This time, their strength was unleashed. As a large number of cannon shells rained down, explosive bombs started to engulf and strike the charging soul beasts. At this moment, the booms generated from the detonation of the first round of shells had just echoed in the air. Around 1/3 of the 500 shells were intercepted. The remaining 2/3 managed to detonate successfully. The tragic screams of soul beasts could be heard amid the terrifying booms caused by the explosions. While some of these shells were intercepted, their explosive strength was still superior to the regular explosive bombs of the Zhuge divine crossbow cannons. As a Class 7 stationary soul cannon shell landed among the soul beasts, the space in the entire region affected by the subsequent explosion completely collapsed. A black halo started to spread, and only stopped when it reached a diameter of 300 meters. Then, this black region started to distort tremendously, and countless bolts of lightning surrounded this region. An airflow filled with a destructive aura started to spread. The name of this Class 7 stationary soul cannon shell was Lightning of Hell. Its terrifying destructive power instantly took the lives of thousands of soul beasts. While the rest of the Class 4, 5 and 6 stationary soul cannon shells were weaker, each of them still managed to hurt and kill many soul beasts. Very soon, Shishing discovered that the Tang sect's stationary soul cannon shells were much stronger than the shells produced by the Academy. There were practically no Class 4 shell, and hardly any Class 5 shells. Most of them were either Class 6 or Class 7. The explosion of every shell managed to affect a large region. They were extremely lethal, and he was struck breathless as he watched the explosions unfold. As the defenses of the other 3 sides of the city were weaker, they were reinforced with more stationary soul cannon shells. Right now, the 4 savage beasts were all astonished as they watched the various cannon shells exploding. They hadn't expected humans to possess such terrifying weapons. Ordinary soul beasts were unable to resist such weapons. After the first wave of stationary shells exploded, more than 15,000 soul beasts were either hurt or killed. Most of them were dead. There were very few injured soul beasts. The number of soul beasts that became casualties after this attack was much greater than the losses the soul beasts had suffered after the earlier confrontations. The 4 savage beasts started to get depressed. All of them had different characters, which naturally meant that their reactions were different. Compared to the Bear Lord's irritation, the Myriad Demon King's gloominess and the Scarlet King's fury, Bai Ji was feeling cold in her heart right now. Humans actually possessed such terrifying weapons. Since when did this happen? Shrek City is probably the most difficult city to attack among all the human cities, but it's still only one of the many cities around. How many of these weapons are present in the 3 human empires? Are the soul beasts from the Great Star Do Forest capable of resisting these weapons with their flesh and blood, and eventually attaining victory? Perhaps it might not be difficult to annihilate Shrek City. However, it's going to be extremely difficult to annihilate the entire human race. The losses they had suffered from attacking Shrek City thus far had exceeded their earlier estimations. However, it was impossible for them to stop halfway. There was no way they could retreat anymore. Emerald Swans, start healing with all your abilities, Bai Ji spoke in a strange voice. Following her words, jade-green figures started to quickly rise into the sky not far away from her. They were swans that were covered by bright jade-green light. After they rose into the sky, they immediately flew in all 4 directions. Each of them released a gentle, jade-green light from their bodies, and they started to heal the soul beasts that were injured by the explosions. They were from the same species as Bai Ji. All these years, she had been protecting and nurturing them to become the healing team of the Great Star Doe Forest. Emerald swans lacked defensive strength, and there were only 100 of them. They weren't supposed to appear on a battlefield, as the forest couldn't afford to lose any of them. However, Bai Ji had no choice but to summon them, given the great number of casualties right now. She couldn't possibly heal all the soul beasts by herself. The only good news for the soul beast army was that the frontline soul beasts had already charged their way to Shrek City's wall now. Countless long-range attacks were targeted towards the top of the walls right now, as if they were meteor showers. All the soul masters did their best to activate their protective soul barriers to defend against the long-range attacks. However, the 4 savage beasts were determined this time. The soul beasts that were charging in front were 1,000-year soul beasts, and they were led by a large number of 10,000-year soul beasts. 100-year soul beasts weren't even allowed to join the front line. This managed to greatly increase the soul beasts' defensive and offensive strength, and the destructiveness of the Zhuge divine crossbow cannons fell greatly. 10,000-year soul beasts still found it fine to resist the attacks of explosive bombs. If a large number of 10,000-year soul beasts defended together, they would greatly reduce the lethality of the Zhuge divine crossbow cannons, while the 1,000-year soul beasts behind the 10,000-year soul beasts unleashed relentless long-range attacks towards Shrek City. They weren't just attacking the top of the city walls, they were also attacking the city walls. Tremendous booms echoed as different colors of light waves and soul power undulations could be seen encircling Shrek City. The fight had reached an intense stage right from the start. Dean Xian. Shishing immediately turned to look at Xian Lina after unleashing his space-time turbulence. Xian Lina gritted her teeth, and her cheek muscles trembled a little. After this, she shouted, "Fire all the stationary soul cannon shells. Don't hold any back." The soul beast's attack was too ferocious. The 10,000 and 1,000-year soul beasts on their front line placed immense pressure on Shrek City. Under such a circumstance, she couldn't place any sentimental attachment on the cannon shells anymore, and had to use them all. Stationary cannon shells were fired towards the distance once again, and they scattered in different directions to stall the reserves of the Soul Beast army from following the frontline Soul Beasts. The 61 self-driving forts were also thrown into the fight, and they were resisting the attacks of the Soul Beasts on the other 3 sides of the city wall. Everyone from the Tang sect was now at the southern city wall. Without a doubt, this was the side of the city that faced the greatest pressure. While the attacks being launched against the other 3 sides of the city were also very strong, the greatest number of 10,000-year soul beasts were charging towards the south side of Shrek City. Bei Bei, Shu Sansha, Jiang Nan, He Kai Tu, Xiao Xiao, Ji Juechen, Jing Ziyan, Na Na, Mo Xian and the others were all waiting as they adopted a strict formation. Mo Xian had entered the battlefield under the protection of an elder from the Sea God's Pavilion. He was given priority access to sealed milk bottles, as he was needed to offer all-around auxiliary support on the battlefield. With him around, the overall fighting strength of the Soul Masters could be raised by 20%. Not far from everyone from the Tang sect were a few familiar faces: Dai Huabin, Zhu Lu, Ning Tian, Wu Feng, Xiao Huanyue, Cao Jinxian, Zhu Sikhen and the Lan sisters. They were also all ready to fight. After all, there was a limit to how long their soul tools could last. Once the sealed milk bottles were drained, a brutal close contact war was bound to ensue. The elders from the Sea God's Pavilion and the teachers from Shrek Academy were facing the strongest soul beasts. There were even more of those 10,000-year and 1,000-year soul beasts that relied on the strongest soul beasts from the Great Star Doe Forest to protect them. Bei Bei turned around and said to his teammates, "Later, we'll have to stick together as we fight. Brother Ji, you'll take the front. Sansha and I will protect your sides." Ji Juechen nodded and held his judgment sword as he walked to Bei Bei's side. Right now, he was extremely excited. To him, a war was like a fight, and his fighting will had long been infused in his blood. Bei Bei then said to the rest, Nan, Xian, the 2 of you will be supporting and coordinating at the sides. Nana, you'll coordinate from the back, while Xiao Xiao will be the main controller behind Brother Ji. Kaitu, you'll be watching and managing the situation from behind Xiao Xiao. What about us, eldest senior? Nan Xiuqiu and Yi Gai started to approach him from beside Nan Shueishui. Bei Bei didn't task them with anything. This was because of their lack of chemistry with everyone else from the Tang sect. At this critical moment, they couldn't affect their team unity. Elder Nan Shui, Yu, Qiu, and Ji Yu will be our backup. Our formation can't be too large, we'll run the risk of encountering too many soul beasts at once. If Ji Juechen isn't able to hold out in front, I'll need you to replace him, Elder Nan Shui. Guy and Qiu, this is the same for the two of you. You must constantly monitor our situation. Once someone has been drained too much, or is injured, the two of you will be replacements. Nan Qiu and Yi Gai were displeased that they weren't immediately sent onto the battlefield. Just as they were about to debate it, they were pulled back by Nan Shui. Nan Shui nodded at Bei Bei and said, "No problem. Let's follow the sect leader's instructions." Bei Bei took in a deep breath and revealed a lost look on his face. "Little Junior, when are you returning? It would be great if we had you around." He wasn't the only one with this thought in mind. Whether it was the Tang sect or Shrek's 7 monsters, everyone was used to fighting with Huo Yuhao as the main control-type soul master. His spiritual detection shared with everyone in battle was the most important guarantee for everyone's survival. However, nobody knew where Huo Yuhao was, and he was nowhere to be seen even until now. Bei Bei rubbed his fists forcefully, and a determined look appeared in his eyes. He lowered his voice and said, "Whether or not this beast wave has anything to do with Yuhao, he will always be a part of the Tang sect, and he will always be the most important part. I will use our sect's strength to protect him no matter what the cost may be. I hope you guys can understand." Shu Sancha said lazily, "Why are you saying all that? Do you think any of us will object? The new generation of Shrek's 7 monsters are one, and the Tang sect is one. One man's glory is everyone's glory. Furthermore, Yuhao's role in the beast wave was lighting the fuse at most." Bei Bei scanned everyone's faces, and could tell that nobody had any intention to object. He heaved a sigh of relief inside. Wasn't he also carrying a heavy burden on his shoulders? Deafening booms echoed out once more as stationary soul cannon shells began to show their fearsome powers explosively. Different beams of light glowed one after another, and large masses of soul beasts perished with each instance. The Zhuge divine crossbow cannons were still firing crazily from the top of the city wall. The other soul tools and shock bombs that Shrek Academy and the Tang sect had provided were being unleashed onto the battlefield without any reservation at all. However, the soul beasts were forging ahead, and still drawing closer and closer to Shrek City. The smell of smoke from guns permeated the air, but the wild stench spreading from those soul beasts was even more penetrating. Right at this moment, the 4 savage beasts, who were hovering in midair, finally made their move. Except for the Emerald Swan, who was moving forward slowly, the other 3 savage beasts were flying towards the top of Shrek's city wall with lightning speed. They weren't the only ones moving. Every savage beast had 20 to 30 soul beasts of many different kinds following behind them and moving along with them. There was no exception, and all of those soul beasts possessed the ability to fly. They were able to follow the savage beasts into battle, and this meant their strengths were worthy. Ferocious shadows gradually appeared one after another in the sky, and they were all soul beasts, who had at least 50,000 years of cultivation. Some of them had more than 100,000 years of cultivation. This group was the true main force of the Soul Beast army, the main force that could determine the outcome of this battle. The frightening force of the stationary soul cannon shells had unsettled these 4 savage beasts. They discussed with each other via their own special communication methods unique only to them, and they decided to attack with full force. The deaths of normal soul beasts didn't really affect the Great Star Doe forest, but if too many soul beasts died, the forest would still be shaken to its very roots. In the end, top-tier soul beasts were once low-tier soul beasts, and which soul beast didn't need an ascension process to become a powerful individual? Would the Great Star Doe forest still have a future if too many low-tier soul beasts perished? Therefore, even though they knew very well that Shrek City wasn't sufficiently spent or exhausted, they had no other choice but to activate their main force that could truly determine the outcome of battle. They had to send out their truly mighty beasts. Everyone from Shrek City was as solemn as could be as they watched the large masses of powerful soul beasts flying toward them in the sky. Of the 4 different sides, the Emerald Swan flew behind everyone else toward the southern city wall, and over 30 mighty soul beasts flew in front of her. There were 7 or 8 soul beasts, who had at least 100,000 years of cultivation, and there were more 100,000-year soul beasts in this group than the other 3 sides. The Emerald Swan was a savage beast, but her direct fighting strength wasn't that strong. In terms of her auxiliary powers and her healing abilities, however, not a single human could match her might. With her around, these formidable soul beasts' fighting strengths undoubtedly doubled. Nobody was willing to start a fight like this, but did Shrek City have a choice? There were relatively few 100,000-year soul beasts on the other three sides, but they were charging toward the city with the savage beasts, who were more adept at fighting. The savage beast who was charging at the fastest pace was the king of the dark golden terraclaw bears, the savage beast who was known for his violent and fierce temperament, the Bear Lord. The Bear Lord's tremendous frame and aura alone gave everyone in Shrek City a feeling as if a mountain was bearing down upon them. Among the defenders on this side, two members of the Sea God's Pavilion rose up to meet this savage beast, the Valkyrie Doluor, Xian Lina, and her husband, the Vice Dean of Shrek Academy's Soul Tool Department, Qian Duoduo. The Bear Lord's body was simply too massive. Even though he could rely on his formidable cultivation to soar through the sky, he still looked a little clumsy. The Bear Lord had 470,000 years of cultivation, and that meant he was more powerful than the Ice Empress even when she was at her peak condition. The standards of the Bear Lord's soul power was close to that of a rank 97 titled Doluor. Furthermore, he was a dark golden terraclaw bear. A dark golden terraclaw bear with 470,000 years of cultivation possessed such formidable direct fighting strength that a typical ultimate Doluor wouldn't be confident of defeating him. The Bear Lord was an overbearing presence in the great Star Do forest that nobody dared to disturb. Xian Lina stood on the battlement calmly. The long-range attacks that those soul beasts beneath her fired were immediately sliced into pieces by a formless power when they reached within 100 meters of her. Their attacks vanished into thin air and could no longer cause any damage. Xian Lina arrived on the western side of the city after she decided to use all the stationary soul cannon shells, her goal being to challenge the Bear Lord. Initially, this task didn't fall to her. She was giving herself more pressure. Ever since she broke through rank 95 and became a transcendent Doluor, she felt that raising her soul power even further was unbelievably difficult, and she finally understood why Yang Xiaozhe spent so many years after reaching rank 95 to ascend another rank. Yang Xiaozhe had only recently reached rank 96, and he was lauded as the #1 prodigy of their generation. Reality proved that Shrek Academy had never lacked talent, but even talented and gifted individuals would have exhausted all their talent by the time they became transcendent Doluor. Every further step after rank 95 was incredibly challenging, but every rank also meant an immense increase in strength at the same time. Xian Lina had once asked Elder Xian how she could go even further. Elder Xian told her that humans were like receptacles, and only sufficiently strong pressure could give them enough push and motivation to ignite their potential. How many people could give Xian Lina this pressure in the world today? With Shrek Academy's environment and surroundings and her status, they would never allow her to take this risk. However, Shrek no longer had a way out in their current circumstances. The soaring Valkyrie was already full of boundless belligerence and fighting intent. Therefore, she found the Bear Lord, who possessed the strongest frontal fighting strength amongst the 4 savage beasts, and who was also the king of the dark golden terraclaw bears. Qian Duoduo didn't stand on the top of the city wall like Xian Lina did. He quietly stood at a position further back on the city wall, but a layer of formidable soul power undulations permeated his surroundings. Qian Duoduo's cultivation rank was lower than Xian Lina's. He had been stuck at rank 94 for quite some time. Furthermore, he could feel that he would never break through this threshold and ascend to rank 95 through his entire lifetime, if he didn't run into some miraculous encounter. Therefore, he channeled more of his time and energy into researching soul tools. Ever since Xian Ziwen had arrived, Qian Duoduo had lowered his attitude, and he had long become a frequent guest of the Tang sect's soul tool hall. He seemed to have found a direction to break through from Class 8 to Class 9 in recent days. In the end, he was a true titled Doluor, and he wasn't like the Sun Moon Empire's Class 9 soul engineers, who became titled Doluor through various cheap methods. Qian Duoduo's solid soul power rank meant there were many things he could do when he became a Class 9 soul engineer. There was a row of metal barrels of many different colors planted on the ground in front of him at this moment. There were 7 in total, and they were all of varying lengths, thickness, and colors, while every single one seemed to have their own unique characteristics. He was just standing calmly behind these 7 barrels as he silently watched Xian Lina, who was standing on the battlements. His face was as calm as ever, and there were many other people standing on top of the city wall on this side. This group included 7 teachers from the inner courtyard, and another elder from the Sea God's Pavilion, along with some students from the inner courtyard. Wu Ming, whose martial soul was a golden crow, was part of this group, along with the boyfriend that she had walked away with from the Sea God's fate, Chu Qingtian. More accurately put, Chu Qingtian was her husband now. Wu Ming and Chu Qingtian stood shoulder to shoulder. Chu Qingtian seemed a little melancholic, but Wu Ming's eyes were filled with excitement, as if there were flames dancing in her eyes. She was one of the demon ladies from Shrek Academy's inner courtyard, and she had always possessed a thirst for battle. Wu Ming hugged Chu Qingtian across the shoulders and whispered, "Relax a little, don't be so nervous. Haven't we been cultivating hard so that we can fight? A big occasion like this isn't something that we can encounter at any time." Chu Qingtian laughed bitterly and said, "I would rather never face a big occasion such as this for my entire life." Wu Ming patted him on his back and said, "Don't worry. I will do my best to protect you later on." Chu Qingtian rolled his eyes and said, "Please, I'm the one who should be saying that, right?" Wu Ming giggled and said, "Who will protect who isn't determined by gender, it's determined by fighting strength." The soul beasts flying through the sky had arrived as the two of them exchanged words. The Bear Lord was within 1 kilometer from Shrek City, and Xian Lina shouted as she applied strength through the tips of her toes, and soared into the sky like an arrow. The sky was the battlefield for powerful individuals at their level. 2 beams of red light emerged from the Bear Lord's eyes, and he could clearly feel intense provocation from Xian Lina. This human female's soul power undulations were inferior to his own, but she possessed a unique quality that attracted his attention. The Bear Lord roared furiously into the sky as he stretched out his arms, and his massive frame shook as he rose through the air. That wasn't all, his frame was already humongous, but he became even larger as he gradually raised his arms into the air. Frighteningly long dark golden terraclaws sprang out, and streaks of black light that resembled cracks in the sky appeared around his sharp talons. He hadn't sliced out with his sharp claws yet, but his claw's aura alone tore through the air. Scorching green flames erupted from Xian Lina's body. She was growing taller, and became more than 5 meters tall in the blink of an eye, even as green armor appeared on her body. Her armor covered her entire body like scales as 2 yellow, 2 purple, and 5 black soul rings rose from beneath her feet. Her enlarged version seemed to make her younger, as if she were a young girl who was in her 20s, and she had an aura full of belligerence and valor. Her current form was the true appearance of the soaring Valkyrie. Xian Lina's martial soul was the green flame dragon, and even though her body was releasing green flames, her martial soul's element was wind. Those flames were produced after wind-type energies were swiftly converted and compressed, and possessed immense disintegrating properties. The green flame dragon was considered a species of flying dragon, and her formidable martial soul was on the same level as the ruby dragon that Nan Shui and Nan Qiuqiu had inherited within the Earth Dragon sect. The ruby dragon's element was annihilation, and that element directly obliterated everything, while the green flame dragon's disintegrating qualities were more focused on slicing and dispersing. The green flame dragon was theoretically considered a direct descendant of the golden dragon, and even the spear in Xian Lina's hands came from her martial soul at birth, similar to the golden dragon's spear. The Valkyrie would never wait on the battlefield. The Bear Lord was becoming larger as he rose into the sky towards her, and Xian Lina's eyes sparkled with intense green light, at the same time, as she spun around in the air and plummeted downwards. She moved like a green shooting star, as she plunged towards the king of the dark golden terraclaw bears. Green flames seemed to seep out of her eyes as she soared through the sky, and she arrived above the Bear Lord in a flash of green light. The Bear Lord made his move, and he made a move that was strength personified. He swung his enormous arms in front of him and clawed out with his palms facing out. Terrifying dark golden hues tainted the sky in the next moment. Just what kind of claws were they? Every single talon transformed into a horrifying dark golden blade that was more than 100 meters long, and his massive dark golden terraclaws seemed as if they were about to tear the heavens apart. This petrifying sight immediately shook the soldiers who were on Shrek City's western wall. The air was completely torn apart wherever these 10 sharp talons crossed, and howls could be faintly heard from those torn spaces. One could see faint dots of starlight amid the eerie darkness. This was the might of a savage beast. Even strong individuals like Di Qian and the Evil Eye Tyrant King were unwilling to take a swipe from the Bear Lord's dark golden terraclaws head-on. The Bear Lord was the true king of destruction. However, something completely unexpected happened. The Valkyrie chose to meet force with force against the dark golden terraclaws that not even the beast god himself was willing to meet head-on. Yes, she chose to meet force with force. A beam of golden light suddenly shot out from the top of Shrek's city wall, and instantly landed on her green flames. In that instant, the green flames that were descending from the sky were layered and protected by a blurry layer of golden light. Hazy mist surrounded all that golden light, and everything seemed a little unreal in that instant. The Bear Lord's terrifying dark golden terror claws swiped across her in a flash. A strange scene occurred when his claws touched that golden light. The bear's sharp claws skidded away, and the hazy golden light immediately became surreal and illusory in that moment. The green flames' downward swoop seemed to pause momentarily, as if they had been layered with grease, and they slipped through the cracks between all that dark golden light. However, the dark golden terror claws were simply too destructive. Even though the golden light was filled with spatial power, all that golden light was still torn to pieces as the green flames slipped past his claws. But that wasn't important. What was important was that the Valkyrie had achieved her goal. She slipped through the bear's deadly claws, and indignant dragon roars echoed throughout the entire battlefield. The green flames became conical, and they went straight for the space between the Bear Lord's eyebrows. She broke through just like that. Back on top of the city wall, Duo stared closely at the battle in the sky, and gradually lowered a golden cannon in his hands. That was Light of Spatial Protection, a Class 8 soul tool. This soul tool was known amongst Class 8 soul tools as the Unbreakable Fortress, and was a stronger version of the Invincible Barrier. This soul tool allowed the user to temporarily enter another dimension when taking a hit, but even so, the Bear Lord's dark golden terror claws still managed to tear through space itself, which meant hiding in another dimension couldn't entirely evade his attack. It wasn't hard to imagine how frightening the Bear Lord's attacking strength was. That was just pure offensive strength. However, their plan was successful in the end. They had been married for many years, and Duo and Xian Lin's chemistry and teamwork was so good that they were almost the same person. They were very clear that in terms of strength, they were no match for the Bear Lord even if they teamed up. They could only make use of the Bear Lord's unfamiliarity and lack of understanding toward soul tools at the start of the battle to catch him by surprise, so that they would have a chance to strike. That was the reason why they had come up with such a fighting strategy, and Xian Lin chose to meet force with force when everyone thought she would avoid the bear's sharp claws. The Bear Lord's frame was too massive, and his excessively large body meant he wasn't very agile. After he grew bigger, the bear was 100 meters tall, while Xian Lin moved with incredible speed. The Bear Lord's arms had just swung through the air when the conical green flames reached the center of his eyebrows, and he didn't have a chance to respond. However, the Bear Lord chose a response that surprised every onlooker. He didn't even attempt to dodge this attack. His dark golden eyes flickered with blood-red colors, and were filled with disdain and indifference as he lowered his head, using his forehead to clash against the conical green flames. That was an all-out attack from Xian Lin, a rank 95 transcendent Doluor, who was known as the Valkyrie. Even though she didn't use her strongest soul skill, because she desired speed, could the Bear Lord's body just forcefully clash against her formidable attack that possessed disintegrating qualities. Green flames scattered in all directions in the sky, and Xian Lin's figure reappeared in the sky as she spiraled through the air. The tremendous impact rendered her unable to control her own body, and she channeled soul power continuously to stabilize herself as she flew backwards rapidly. And the Bear Lord. He simply arched his large head backwards, and several strands of dark golden fur drifted down from his forehead. He used the back of his paws and rubbed his forehead before he howled furiously. It seemed like all he took was a little pain, and he didn't suffer any real injuries at all. The Soul Masters watching from the top of the city wall were astounded when they saw this. Nothing happened to the Bear Lord when he clashed forcefully with an attack from a transcendent Doluor. He didn't even shed a single drop of blood. That was simply too unbelievable. Were the Bear Lord's defenses that fierce and formidable? Yes, the bear's defenses were indeed that strong. Xian Lin felt this the most because she was the one who had attacked him. When her green flame spear stabbed into the Bear Lord's forehead, she felt as if she had actually clashed with a shooting star. Terrifying strength instantly sent her hurtling through the air, and her right arm, that was holding onto her green flame spear, was all sore and numb. One could only understand whether the opponent was strong or weak in an actual encounter. Not a single beast wasn't worthy of their reputation, and the Bear Lord lived up to his name as number 5 of the 10 great savage beasts. There was no question that he possessed the strongest offensive capabilities among today's 4 savage beasts. The Bear Lord's muscular chest bulged as he swung his arms outward. His thick arms stretched out at his side, and he howled furiously as he suddenly raised his dark golden terror claws high into the sky. All his fur began to shine with intense golden light, and in that moment, he sparkled and shone like a sun. His roars were extremely thick and dense, and they resonated through the heavens like dull thunderclaps. His roars shook the soul masters and soldiers standing on the city wall beneath him until they felt dizzy, while the soul beasts that were attacking the city became exceptionally excited. Their attacking momentum became fiercer than before, and the soul tools on top of the city wall seemed like they couldn't hold those soul beasts back any longer. Xian Linna's expression instantly became serious and solemn. She had the strongest feelings about the Bear Lord, because she was facing him directly. She couldn't really withstand the Bear Lord's frightening pressure, which resembled that of a mountain, even with her cultivation rank, and the green dragon scales on the surface of her body rippled continuously to dispel that pressure. Is the Bear Lord using his signature move from the get-go? What kind of fighting style is this? Xian Linna didn't dare to neglect her opponent. The Bear Lord was stronger than she had predicted, and she grit her teeth as she raised her green flame spear high into the air. The green flames on her body flourished at the same time, and waves of dragon roars could be heard. Her seventh soul ring glowed as she instantly transformed into a giant green dragon and circled in midair. She unleashed layers of green flame again and again, and these flames formed a colossal green dragon head in front of her as she stared at the Bear Lord opposite her in the distance. Qian Duo didn't idle around, either. Xian Linna was evidently unable to stop the Bear Lord by herself, and he tapped the ground with the tip of his foot as he swiftly flew out from the city. This time, he didn't carry his soul tools. 9 soul rings glimmered on his body, and his 7th soul ring sparkled as black light gradually cocooned his body while he rose into the sky. He transformed into an enormous shield, and swiftly rose to Xian Linna's side. This shield was squarish, and there were black dragon patterns on its surface. A black dragon seemed to shimmer on the shield's surface, but the dragon's eyes weren't golden like that of the beast god, but red instead. The shield's surface seemed to be inlaid with 2 red gems. This was Qian Duo's martial soul, the black dragon shield. Back in the day, Qian Duo, Cai Maya, Xian Linna, and Yang Xiaozha were known as Shrek's golden generation, because their martial souls were all powerful, and they possessed formidable strength. Yang Xiaozha was the strongest among them, and Xian Linna came next, and Cai Maya after her. Qian Quoquo was weakest one, but he was a defense-type soul master, and his defensive capabilities were the most outstanding among them. This was also the most important reason why he chose to become a soul engineer in the end. There was a part of his past that was very regrettable, and he craved defensive power. This video will end here.